Blind Citizens Australia proudly presents the An Eye to the Future Job Ready Workshop Series. A positive mindset towards creating my career opportunities. Hosted by Blind Citizens Australia with special guest Shane Kendall.
Okay, so let's start off with our acknowledgement to country. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands that we are all gathering on today in this physically dispersed meeting. I am coming to you from the Gadigal lands of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia. As we gather for this physically dispersed meeting, let us take a moment to reflect upon the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognise the various traditional lands on which we gather today. So my name is Claire. I am a project officer with an eye to the future. And with us today, we have my colleague, Maddie, who is also a project officer with an eye to the future. We have Bettina Twyman, our project manager, and our guest speaker, Shane, who we will be hearing from shortly about his journey in creating his career opportunities, including following his passions and finding what his strengths were along the way. So before we get started, just an introduction to An Eye to the Future. An Eye to the Future is an initiative from Blind Citizens Australia, funded by the Department of Social Services. This initiative recognises the career potential of people who are blind or vision impaired. We support job seekers with job readiness, including the job search, resume and cover letter preparation, interview preparation, and we can also offer one-to-one discussions about the topic we are discussing today. We also work closely with employers, providing education and awareness workshops and tailored training sessions to support employers to create those accessible and inclusive workplace cultures and practices. And this includes helping employers to think differently about their recruitment and employment processes, and providing advice and guidance on hiring someone who is blind or vision impaired in their workplace. Once a person who is blind or vision impaired has employment, we can continue our support for both employer and employee as they settle into the workplace. Today's workshop is the final workshop in our Positive Mindset series. Our first two workshops, a positive mindset towards the job search and a positive mindset towards assistive technology, can be found on our Eye to the Future YouTube channel. And we warmly invite you to go in and view the recorded content at your leisure. Today, we are going to discuss a positive mindset towards creating your career opportunities, including overcoming barriers and creating networks. Okay, so let's get started. The key to a successful career is to find a job that reflects your interests, your skills, and your qualifications. And a good place to start in the job search is to think about your interests and where you would like to go in the future. So it's important to know your strengths and capabilities. Learning about yourself, your values, interests, attitudes, and your personality type is a great way to help you identify what occupations are a good fit for you. Asking yourself questions like the following can be helpful. Take a moment to reflect now on your answers to these following questions. Are you a lone ranger or a collaborator? Or perhaps a combination of both? Are you practical, or do you prefer to work with ideas? Do you like being busy with lots going on, or prefer to focus on one task at a time? Do you get more satisfaction from working with people or working with processes? Are you best communicating one-on-one or within groups? Thinking about your life goals and interests will help you move towards finding fulfilling employment. Noticing your goals and milestones along the way or barriers that you need to overcome can be helpful in planning your career. Think about a potential career or role that interests you. And here are some considerations that you can reflect on now just to get you started. Do you have the required qualifications, certificates, licenses, or other professional requirements to do the job that you are interested in? Does your work experience match the skills needed for the job? Do you need to develop any other skills that will enable you to succeed at work? Are you confident in your orientation and mobility skills? Do you know which assistive technology works for you and how to use it? In answering these questions, you may identify areas for growth or feel that there are some barriers in front of you, and that's okay. So let's take a step back and consider how you can approach these considerations in order to move forward. Firstly, explore potential occupations. So based on the responses to the considerations above, you may start to get an idea of what careers and roles interest you. Try not to second guess yourself at this stage. You might be surprised to know that people who are blind or vision impaired are engaged in industries such as psychology, law, engineering, teaching, tour guides, welding and sheet metal workers, carpentry, mechanics, and artists, just to name a few. The universe is the limit, as you'll find out shortly from Shane. Secondly, research the realities of that career. So you now have an idea of what kind of roles you're interested in, but what is it really like working in this career? It's time to gather some first-hand information by connecting with people and organizations who are willing to give you advice and insights about the fun stuff as well as the challenges of the role. Ways to find connections include asking your friends and families if they know anyone who is already working in your area of interest and whether they would mind passing on their contact details so you can set up a meeting with them. Work experience and volunteering opportunities give you a front row seat to assess whether the role is right for you. Consider contacting organizations of interest about what opportunities are available, or seek assistance through a job search agency to help you set something up. Look up local job expos run by schools, universities, and councils as another option. Thirdly, find out more about the career pathway. Based on all your research and the information you have gathered, which occupation do you think will bring you the most satisfaction? What are the stepping stones to get there? And are you willing and able to take these steps, which may include upskilling or further education along the way? It is important to consider that roles can support you to network and gain that industry experience towards your chosen career. So, for example, if your goal is to become a CEO of a technology company, the steps along the way might be seeking entry-level roles in technology companies to gain experience and starting to build your network to support you whilst you complete relevant education opportunities in business and/or technology. As your skills, networks, and confidence grows, you can apply and expand into more senior roles towards the goal of CEO. Remember that looking for work can be a long process, and working towards your dream job with many competing factors to consider. So your chosen roles and timelines may change as you go along, and that's okay. It's now time to look for employment opportunities in your areas of interest. You have done the hard yards. You have an idea of where you would like to go, what you need to do to get there, and you have a good understanding of the career pathway. Your resume is ready, and from your research, you understand what makes a great cover letter. You now have everything you need to create your pathway to success. It can be really helpful to treat the job search as a job in itself. So try implementing the following. Set aside time each day to focus on applying for positions, following up on applications and preparing for interviews. Keep track of your activities, such as positions you have applied for, useful contacts, and recruitment agencies, including scheduling those follow-ups and noting any closing dates for roles that you're interested in. Continue researching companies and industries in your area of interest as you go. There are many ways to approach the job search, and here are some methods to get you started. Job search websites are the single biggest source of employment opportunities and the most obvious place to start. Some of the most widely used sites include Seek, Ethical Jobs, APS Jobs, The Field Jobs, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Career One, and Indeed. So you can set up notifications on these sites to ensure that new jobs land in your inbox as soon as they are advertised. Professional networking is often an important step when creating and maintaining your professional career. This can be done in a variety of ways, including in person, through volunteering and work experience, and social media such as LinkedIn, and to a lesser extent, Facebook and X, which was formerly Twitter. And don't underestimate your personal and professional contacts. Let people know that you are seeking employment and what roles you are looking for. Try expanding your network by attending business events and being active in your community. When it comes to the point that you want to apply for a role, Eye to the Future facilitated a series of workshops in 2023 that focused on creating applications, including resumes and cover letters, disclosing, and interviewing with confidence. And we warmly invite you to review these recordings when the time is right for you. Okay, so let's now hear from Shane about his lived experience of how he went about creating his own career opportunities. So I want to welcome Shane and ask if you could perhaps just start, Shane, by introducing yourself, including a bit of a brief description of what work you are currently involved in.
Okay, thank you for inviting me to be here. It's pretty exciting for me, so I'm nervous. Anyway, my name my name is Shane Kendall. I've had a pretty long career, I guess. So I started out in working in the music industry as a musician, then became I worked for a record label at one point, transitioned to a music producer. From there, got into some content creation stuff in radio and podcasts. And currently, and this is a bit of a pinch myself moment, I am attached to the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, working as it's a very long job title, we might need to work on it, a astro multi-sensory and sonification specialist. So that basically means we analyze data using sound rather than visual cues. This has to do with accessibility, but also, there's things like gravitational waves that we literally cannot see anyway, so we've got to find some way to do it. So yeah, that's my current project, and it's pretty exciting. I love it.
Thanks, Shane. That sounds really interesting. And we're going to ask you a few questions now just to kind of understand your journey about how you got there. It's a very interesting and niche field that you're working at the moment, so we're really keen to hear about more. So starting at the beginning, we're going to take a step back. Can you tell us about your transition from education to your very first employment opportunity?
I think I mentioned this earlier, but I don't feel like I have a very good answer for this question, because to me, earlier in life, like, when most people are starting to look at these things in school, education versus the things I was doing when I started forming my career, these things kind of conflicted. I felt like education was getting in the way of me doing the things I was doing, which was starting out as, a young songwriter and musician and going out gigging and putting on concerts and things like that. And then, I had to go to school 5 days a week, and that wasn't helping with those career aspirations. Something I don't talk about very much, actually, made a note to bring this up, is while I was doing all of the things with music, I was also an aspiring sports person. So once again, I could have been training. That's how I felt about it at the time. So education, I have had a challenging history at the moment. So I've just started university. I'm doing a Bachelor of Science, and I am finding education, along with what I'm doing with the astrophysics, they are working together quite harmoniously. So it's different experience this time round. I don't feel like it's getting in the way at all. So yeah, I would be curious to reflect on this question 5 years from now when I've finished my bachelor. But to try and answer the question somewhat, I did study, did I study? I've got an advanced diploma of music and a diploma of music business. And those things, well, to be honest, the diploma of music hasn't helped me much in my career. I did that after I'd already been working in the music industry. So it was more of a fill in a few of the gaps. So not to say it wasn't helpful, but it hasn't, it's been more of a personal thing rather than a career uh, enhancer. The music business qualification has been hugely helpful, and I think it's best to speak about that more in a further question. But that has given me a huge amount of transferable skills I did not think I would get out of that. So yeah.
No, so that's really interesting, and it's interesting to hear that uh the time at which education and what type of education you engaged in became really helpful in terms of kind of propelling along your career and finding those transferable skills. And what I'm hearing is, for the very first kind of employment opportunities you had, which was around the music and the gig industry, it was actually that work experience that was really the valuable piece, if I'm right in
uh,
hearing that.
Definitely, I would say up until now, where I'm at university and doing the stuff with astronomy, this is the first time where my skills are not going to get me where I want to go, or I can't. Well, I suppose that this is all developing the skills, but it's not. I don't have transferable skills to be an astrophysicist. I haven't come across that path until very recently. So yeah, everything I've done is skills based, even including starting with the astrophysics. I started that as an audio engineer. So yeah, definitely. It's been all about work experience and learning, making it up as I go along, as I like to say.
Well, perhaps this next question can lead us into understanding a little bit more about those transferable skills that you learned about. So, you know, as your vision changed, how did you keep seeking opportunities and identifying those transferable skills that you could use along the way?
Um, it's a very hard question for me to answer because I think a lot of it has to do with my personality. I'm a pretty, I like to approach things, and I always have, with a lot of objectivity. So my answer to this question is, I think it took a lot of critical thinking and knowing myself. And those two topics, we could do workshops on those two things alone. So I don't feel it's a very strong answer without elaborating on those things, but
Please elaborate.
definitely knowing myself, knowing my strengths and weaknesses, how far I can push my strengths, what I need to do to improve my weaknesses, and also the unfortunate times where I need to come to terms with the fact that maybe I just can't do something, which we'll talk about barriers soon, but that's, I guess, the unfortunate reality. I do need to keep that in mind and not get my hopes up too much with certain things. But I think with that comes along with the critical thinking is identifying other areas of I should maybe I should put it this way. Maybe I'll come across an opportunity and be very interested in it and decide it's not for me for whatever reason, whether it's something that I feel I can't do or I'm not interested in parts of it, but it can inspire me to look further into that area. For example, I am not that interested in astronomy, believe it or not. I'm interested in audio, and a large part of what I do with astronomy is audio. So that's what I mean by sometimes uh, you've just got to let yourself be inspired and think about the things you can and can't do and want to and don't want to do. Another part that helped me to go back to it was education, because I engaged with outside of the regular school that most people engage with. I didn't go to education until I was in my mid-20s, which is further away than I'd like to think, but not that it wasn't that long ago. And I found education was, I guess it literally tested your knowledge. It taught a lot of things, but it literally tested your knowledge and your ability to learn. So I think that really helped me work out the things that my skills, what I can and what I can't do. And you learn a lot about that. I learned I didn't know nearly as much about the things I thought I did, and there was a lot of things that I didn't know I could do, but could do very well, it turned out. So they're my main points, I guess, when it comes to transferable skills. So on the topic, I guess this is where I want to, when I was talking about education on transferable skills, I did my diploma of music business, which turns out is just regular business. It just uses music industry as the theme, but it's all much the same, really. It's just marketing. And back in 2019, so a few years after I'd finished my study, there was an opportunity to work at Vision Australia. I can't remember what the job title was, but it was very client focused. And I thought I could probably do that job because I'd been working in the music industry, dealing with a lot of problems, a lot of troubleshooting, communicating with a lot of people. And the other part of it is through my qualification doing the music business. It was really drilled into me the benefits of critical thinking, and things like SMART goals and SWOT analysis almost became second nature. So working at Vision Australia, doing something very client focused, I figured and found to be correct that my experiences in the music industry and my qualification in a way had nothing to do with this job, but in another way had everything to do with it, just because of those skills, to be able to analyze and assess and think and quickly and communicate with people. So that's how my education did play a role in all of this.
That's really interesting. So there were definitely, like you said, with the smart goals and so on, those are transferable skills that would apply to many different industries and do apply to many different industries. And you mentioned before, kind of the first step you took was kind of knowing about your strengths and following your particular interest. So that interest in audio kind of led you to this really, I think, really interesting career that you have now and the education opportunities that came with it. Can I ask, how did you kind of identify your strengths along the way? What was it that kind of triggered that understanding that you were really good at something? And can you give us an example of how that led you into an opportunity?
Oh, wow. Uh, if I can just be completely honest, I
Yes.
think validation has a lot to do with that. And I will try things, and often it turns out not terrible. Often it turns out working out well. So I think once again, I think it comes back to knowing myself and knowing my skills and how they can be transferred. But when I do something and another person, whether it be a client or an employer or anybody says, actually, that was really good. The validation, I think, is what helps me identify that, well, this skill that I've got, I was unsure of. Well, now I'm sure of it because somebody else has identified that I have that skill. So maybe I don't know, I've never thought about that before, but I think that's probably the best way I can answer that question is feedback and validation.
Yeah, absolutely. So recognition as you're going along that this is really good from the people around you. And that's been really important for you to identify where your strengths are, which is really interesting. So perhaps we can talk a little bit more about, you mentioned earlier about overcoming some of those barriers. So how did you approach the barriers that came up along the way, and how did you overcome them?
This has been a work in progress. I think last time we spoke, I joked about kicking doors down,
Yeah, that's right.
which is not exactly true, but not untrue. And we're talking figuratively, of course. Um,
Just to
but
clarify.
yes, I'm not a fan of vandalism. Um, but like I'm sure anybody, when you're starting a new journey, uh, it's scary. So of course, uh, and yeah, let's not overlook that when you've got different things going on, such as a vision impairment, there are seemingly, and often is, let's not pretend it's not, there are barriers. Sometimes those barriers look bigger and scarier than they are, though. I guess that's why I chose the word seemingly. So of course, at first, and still do, approach things with a level of caution, of course, and pragmatism. Once again, this comes back to knowing myself and who I am. But as I gained confidence, and I think self-confidence is very important as well. And as we were just speaking about getting some of that affirmation and validation that I'm kind of doing the right things, um, the barriers they don't seem as big anymore. Or I don't know, I see them as they're almost a fun challenge at times. So somebody, if there's an opportunity and there seems to be a barrier, I will find 5 ways to get around it, or I will point out maybe I can't do this, but I can do that. I'll try and fill a gap, I guess is maybe the way I'd put it. And I don't know, I approach this with at this point, I would say a healthy dose of ego. Ego is a good thing. I think that word gets a bad rap, but ego is what gets us up in the morning. So at this stage, I feel like I've done enough things to a level of quality that I'm no longer really afraid to, as we joked about, kick down some doors to find or create those opportunities. Because Self-confidence. I know that I can do a good job at most things that are in my realm. I will never be an accountant. I am awful at mathematics, and I know that never, you don't want me doing your tax. But if you need something to do with audio or music, like I'm confident that I will do a great job. So at this stage, yeah, I identify no barriers there because I've been doing it for so long and I know how all of these things work. So that's my approach to overcoming barriers. I understand it might seem a little easier said than done. And it seems that way because that's really is how I am presenting it, but it does get easier just with more life experience. The more adversity you face, the smaller these issues seem to be. That's been my experience anyway.
That's really interesting. And it's, the point that I'm hearing you raise is that all of that work that you did in the beginning around the work experience, understanding yourself and strengths, developing those transferable skills. You mentioned how a lot of that first diploma in music, that business diploma that you did was around those solving lots of problems and overcoming barriers. And that's a really big transferable skill. And it's a skill that people with vision impairment or blindness are using on their day-to-day basis to get do daily tasks or within the workplace or within the community. And they're just such transferable skills and strengths that we can apply to different employment opportunities. And I'm also hearing that, through your kind of lived personal and professional experience, you really develop that confidence, which has been a huge piece in that kind of positive mindset in approaching those barriers and kind of, like you said, kicking down those, and just to clarify again, metaphorical doors, to find different ways around a certain issue or an alternative if that's what needs to happen. So that's really interesting. And to our point about kind of researching the realities of a role as well, understanding about what it really means to do this role, what's really involved in this particular job. And you mentioned before, approaching a job with curiosity and kind of analyzing it to see that certain parts of the job are of particular interest to you and other parts not so much. And perhaps that's just a job in itself. All jobs have areas that we love and that we're not so keen on, and that's how it works. But you kind of have described really focusing in on those parts that you really enjoy and using that as your kind of kickboard into those different opportunities, which is really interesting. So
If I may cut in, I just thought of something because I was going to make a joke about how I wish I had somebody like you always around me to rephrase all the things I'm saying into a much more concise package. But honestly, I think another thing worth mentioning is, and as I keep talking about knowing yourself, and knowing yourself is knowing other people and how you're positioned. And I think listening to people and being able to do exactly what you've done, which is gather their information and make it concise. And if you can especially rephrase it in a way that's more eloquent than the original person presenting it, I think that's a really good way of as I said, positioning, knowing yourself and where you fit amongst other people. So that's just a little side note based on the fact that I love the fact that you can just rephrase everything that I say much better than I originally did.
it's really interesting hearing all of your experience, Shane, because you come from a perspective of the work experience plus the education and that kind of, like you said, objectivity about when is education or pursuing those opportunities in education actually really helpful for the experience, and when is it not, and what parts can you take, like that, those aspects from the music business diploma that you're still applying now, probably within your current role. Which kind of brings us on to our next question, actually, which is around the transition from sound engineer to astrophysicist is a really interesting paths. And I'm interested to know, how did you create this path? And what are you planning next? What steps are you taking next in this kind of career journey?
Okay, I'll give the the answer that'll have a bit of a lesson in it, but then I'll tell the story. So to go back to transferable skills, I started working on an annual event called White Stick Fest, which is an online. Well, and last year it had a live element, but mostly online music festival celebrating and raising awareness for International White Cane Day. I started doing that, just once again, side note, that's a video concert. I had never edited a video before, but figured it's not that different from working with audio. So once again, another transferable skill. But through that, I was introduced to a scientist named Dr. Wanda Diaz-Merced. Specifically, how that came about is I was approached by a mutual friend of myself and Wanda. The way it was presented to me was, would you like to listen to a black hole? In which I responded, you can't listen to a black hole. And I was proven very wrong. It just needs to be done differently. But this person knew, they exploited my interest in audio. They knew if they put it that way, I'd be interested. So that's how I met Dr. Diaz-Merced. So I don't know how much detail I can go into, like the specifics of this, but she was working on software that will train other people to do what she does, which is sonification, listening to data. Well, it's a process. Sometimes the data is already audible, it's in the form of signals, and you've got to find noise in it and then convert that into something more listenable. So anyway, she was developing this software and she was looking for somebody who understood audio, accessible technology, or at least how to make technology accessible, and preferably lived experience with being low vision or blind. I should mention that Dr. Diaz-Merced is also, I want to say fully blind. She might have some light perception. I'm not sure. I haven't asked. So go and look her up. She's pretty amazing. I'm so grateful to be working with her. But that's how that started, because networking, I guess, is maybe the way I should present this, but mutual friend suckered me in, knowing that I'd want to listen to black holes, because I get nerdy when it comes to audio stuff. So from there, I was assisting Wanda with this software that we still have not actually finished, because things just took off. I got more curious about sonification and what she does, and she basically took me under her wing. And I've learned so much from her. It's really helped with my university. It might not come as a surprise that when you're doing a Bachelor of Science, having a renowned astrophysicist to help you with your homework is beneficial. But so she says, and I'll take her word for it, I feel like I've done very little, but she says that working with me has helped her a lot, as well, as far as to keep going back to it, knowing herself and knowing that what does she know and how can she pass that on to somebody else, and that makes her need to relearn or rephrase, rethink things that she already knows. So through that and her network, she is now the executive director of the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, which she got that by winning a grant. Well, in the context of science, a very small amount of money. I would gladly take it for personal income, but small amount of money as far as science is concerned. And the observatory, I think it's for 5 years at this stage. and with the goal of turning that into it will be a research facility, but it is also going to have a large focus on multisensory education. So a part of what I'm doing now is still assisting with research, but we're designing exhibitions to be multisensory. So for example, we are making it's hard to explain, but we are making an exhibition that will have obviously a visual cue because everything it needs to present itself somehow, but it will also make sound and have haptic or touch feedback to, at this stage, we're thinking about representing weather cycles that people can experience audibly or with touch, which is pretty exciting to be working on that and really engaging that creative side of my mind, as well as I said, we're still doing a bit of research as well. So it's really exciting. As I said, I wake up every day thinking like, why I have no business doing any of this stuff. I also get to collaborate with other agencies. I'm working on a project with Berkeley University in California and Harvard and Smithsonian Museum. I have in the past and again this year. And it's just, my attitude is, I'm nobody from nowhere. I have no business talking to all of these people, but they want to talk to me. So I feel incredibly, I feel fortunate, but also recognize it's because of the work I've done. So yeah, I think that sums it up. That's what I'm doing now and will be in the future.
That's really interesting and sounds incredible and incredibly, coming back to the kind of point of this workshop, which is basically that positive mindset towards creating your own career opportunities, and those career opportunities being something that is personally very fulfilling and satisfying. And it sounds like that's where you found yourself after your years of work experience, combined with education, combined with curiosity into taking opportunities that came your way and transferring those skills across. So, and all those kind of networking opportunities and objectivity and research into the realities of a particular role or job or industries, and all of that has come together in this way where you find yourself, from what I'm hearing, in a really a satisfying career for you, for your personal interests, for your strengths, and for your goals in the future. So that's really exciting, and congratulations on everything that you've achieved up to this point and will achieve in the future, it sounds like.
Hopefully, to add to what you were just saying, for me, it's of course being this advice I give, adding caution, but I got these opportunities just because I'm happy to just give things a go, and if somebody has an opportunity, I'll say yes to it. Don't do anything dangerous, but just say yes to things. Everything, you'll be all right. That's my advice, and that's how I've done these things, because I'll give that a go. The worst thing that happens is it doesn't work out. Everyone will be fine. So just say yes to things and be enthusiastic. And I am a believer in doing what you're good at, and you'll learn to love it. So I say that coming from the music industry, I love music. It burnt me out, but now I do what I'm good at, and maybe it comes back to that the validation. Maybe I love the validation more than the work. But yeah, I keep following the things that I'm succeeding in, and keep saying yes to opportunities.
Thanks, Shane. That's a really nice message to leave everyone with. And that does bring us to the end of our content for today's workshop. As a reminder, we are accepting expressions of interest to our program. And we would like to just take this opportunity now to open the floor to ask Shane any questions that you may have around what the topic and on the different aspects that we've discussed today. And I might just ask Bettina if you wouldn't mind fielding the questions for us.
No worries.
So if you do have a question, you can raise your virtual hand, and you can do that by the keyboard command Alt+Y, or if you're on a phone, it's *9.
Oh, hi. That was really interesting to listen to. I'm currently in the program in this program anyway. So, but I suppose I can relate to a lot of the things that Sean said, and I guess my question. I'm probably a bit older than Sean and a different stage in my life, and I suppose through financial commitments and life in general, it to me creates some barriers to just following your dreams because of financial limitations or demands, I suppose. I'm just wondering whether Sean's had to balance that situation, by following his dreams as well.
Right, yeah, that's that's the million-dollar question, really. Of course, I didn't go into it too much, but I started out as a musician, which is not a glamorous lifestyle and doesn't pay particularly well, but it was my passion. So yeah, that's and I'm glad you mentioned it as well. Stacking a vision impairment on top of that does make things harder. So, for example, when I was playing in bands, all of my bandmates, they get a forklift license. You can get casual work, so we can spend our time doing all the musician things, going on tour and things like that. They can come home and just get a job in a warehouse. I couldn't do that. So there was definitely the finding that balance, and ultimately why I started stepping away from being a musician in that context and started working. As I said, I worked for a record label for a while doing artist and repertoire work. I worked as a session musician, so I'd be hired to play on other people's albums, so just in studios. Then becoming a music producer for myself. Sorry, I shouldn't say for myself. I had produced very little of my own music, but me deciding to become a music producer, I did have to step away from the part that I truly did love, which was being out on the road and performing and interacting with people. So I don't know. I don't want that answer to sound like it's soul depleting to have to give up on that. I have found it. I love what I do now, but I did have to sacrifice. I did have to let other parts of it go. But the message that the thing I keep coming back to is transferable skills, and that's why I was saying I do what I'm good at, but I'm fortunate that it comes from the thing that I love, which is making music. To me, at this what I'm doing now with the astrophysics is still it's disjointed. It's not particularly pleasing, but I still treat that as making music. I want to make it as interesting as it possibly can be. So yeah, I feel you. And something I want to just acknowledge, something that has helped a lot is, my wife is incredible and has been so supportive. We've supported each other. She's, went through university and things like that. So that's however it is, having a support network, I think not just financially, but even just emotionally, having a support network to help you transition through all of these life stages. Ultimately, I think that's what it is. A passion, doing things out of passion is a young man's or woman's game, I feel. So, but that is a good question that I'm going to be thinking about for the next for the next week, I think. So maybe I'll get in touch and have a better answer for you.
Well, that's cool. Like, I'll give you an example. I was given an opportunity last year to do a PhD. When I was very flattered. It was through the UTS in Sydney, and and I said to the guy, "So what does it pay?" And he goes, "Like 35 grand a year." And I earn three times that, uh, 3 or 4 times that, and it's so, as much as I would have loved to have. It's a project where they're using sound to help you see, which obviously really interests me. I'm an engineer, but it really interests me, and so I would have loved to have just given up my job and gone on and I'd never thought about doing a PhD, but I was very flattered because he could see the passion and that I had in what he was doing in the project that he's doing. But the practicality of it is that I have a mortgage and a wife and all those sorts of things to support and all that sort of stuff. And so it's that's what I said. It comes down to the practicality versus the reality of opportunities, and I think that's the hard thing for me, anyway.
I feel like I need to be asking you that question. That's what your experience is, what I'm afraid of in the future. Um, but no, that's very interesting, and uh, you know, uh, that's a tough circumstance to go back and do that where you are now, to especially financially, to go back. That pay seems a little low, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I thought that.
yeah, like that's rough to have that opportunity and passion but not be able to do it. Uh yeah, that's a tricky situation that I haven't had to face that. As I said, I'm going to be thinking about this question, and I think you're more qualified to answer it than I am.
Paul,
No, I just thought, sorry.
sorry, Paul, I was just going to ask, was there any opportunity where you could do the PhD and part-time work, like some sort of balance there?
Oh, look, I think the gap between and
Yeah,
the time, like it's all time.
yeah.
It's availability of time and the
Mm.
gap between the income and all that. It just didn't, for me, as I say, at my point of life, it just didn't seem practical to do that. If I was in a different situation with less
Obligations.
obligations, then uh, I probably would have considered it. But
Yeah.
and hopefully another opportunity comes along. I'm still involved in the project. I'm actually going into UTS in a couple of weeks to do some more work with them. So I'm still involved in the project. That's the beauty of that. But I just I was flattered that he wanted me to become part of it and do a PhD on it. So and it's just based on the story I've just heard. It sort of sounds like a similar scenario where just through a mutual contact. I met this guy and started doing some things with him, and it sort of merged into this other experience. And I sort of really agree with what was said. About you've got to network and take your opportunities. That's all.
That's such a good point. And yeah, with that networking part of it, and maybe perhaps, touching back on Shane's point of that validation, you say, you felt really flattered by that. And and it's of course because there's that validation of, they really believe that you're the right person and you have all these strengths that would be really valuable for that particular project. So that's something to take away with you, regardless of the fact that you couldn't land on it this time round. But as you said, perhaps a future opportunity will come available, and you can still be part of the project in some way. So you had that really nice sense of validation that Shane's talked about in terms of kind of fueling and reaffirming your strengths and what you're good at.
Sure, absolutely. I'm just as passionate as Shane, so I'm on the journey.
This is just a reminder that this was the final workshop in the series of 3, and we do warmly invite you to revisit the content of our previous 2 workshops on our website. From today's workshop, we do encourage you to use the strategies we discussed in the workshop and take some time to kind of reflect on the insights that Shane and Paul have shared with us today and your current strengths and interests for the career that you would like to pursue. So just to say again, we thank you all for joining us today, and thank you very much to Shane for coming in and contributing your insights on this topic. It was really interesting to hear from you today, and we hope you all have a lovely day. Take care, everyone.
That concludes today's webinar. You can find out more at itothefuture.com.au/home. An Eye to the Future is an initiative of Blind Citizens Australia, informing, connecting, and empowering Australians who are blind or vision impaired.